Hey, it's Courtney Marie Andrews, and you're listening to Walking the Floor.
I'm walking the floor over you.
Walking the floor.
I'm walking the floor. Walking the floor over you.
Hola, senors and senoritas, and welcome to another edition of Walking the Floor. This is the second one for 2017, but this is actually a landmark episode because it's our 70th episode of Walking the Floor right here today. 70 episodes deep. We're going to celebrate by having my new friend Courtney Marie Andrews on the show today. I got to tell you, I am still buzzing from earlier this week. A music legend, country music legend, Rodney Crowell stopped by Walking the Floor World Headquarters, and I got to sit down and have a really amazing long conversation with him that I'll be posting soon, but not before we get to this one today. And not before I remind you about all my upcoming gigs and stuff. Lots of stuff coming together around the release of my record that's going to be coming soon. I'm going to have information on all that stuff really soon. But first, don't forget on February 2nd, Thursday, February 2nd, come on out to the Redwood. It's Dave House's record release party, and I'm going to be opening for him. And I think that Johnny Madcap's playing that show too, so that'll be a lot of fun. Be like a bunch of aging punk rockers playing not punk rock. Just for you. I'm selling it so good. And then also just 2 days later on February 4th, which is a Saturday night, going to be playing with my friends Tim Curran and Paul Cannon down at Univ Surf Shop down in Encinitas. I believe that there will be free tacos, so how can you pass that up? This is like my third or fourth gig in the San Diego area in recent months, man. I'm working that market. So if you didn't make it to the last ones, or even if you did, come on out. Both those shows are going to be solo acoustic type shows. And then really soon, maybe even in like the middle of the week, we'll see if we can get it together. I will be announcing tour dates. I swear to God. And I don't want to give anybody a heart attack, but I will be leaving the West Coast for some of them. So hold on to your hats, ladies and gentlemen. That's coming really soon. A lot of stuff coming soon. Going to have lots of information about the release date and pre-sales and blah, 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 and video this and that. And, you know, we've been working on a lot of stuff, getting ready to put the record out, and it's coming together now. But let's not forget to talk about my good friends out at Zounds.com. Zounds.com from the great city of Chicago, Illinois. They will match any deal you find on the internet for guitar stuff or bass stuff, music gear, drums, recording stuff, pro audio, whatever you need. They got it. Go to it. Zounds.com. Let's get to the interview today. Come on. My guest today is Miss Courtney Marie Andrews, a singer-songwriter who started out really young. I think she got her start playing in bands in like a feminist punk rock band, but hit the road at like age 16 on a Greyhound bus, just busking, man, figuring it out, just getting out there and jumping into it. It wasn't too long before she got asked to go out with Jimmy Eat World as a backup singer. And she's been like a gun for hire, backup singer, guitar player, you know, whatever, utility person in bands, you know, for years now. And she's got a bunch of records. She's got a pretty new one called Honest Life that is fantastic. And even though, you know, she's young, you think of her as like an up-and-comer, but she's got a lot under her belt already. So let's hear what she has to say about it. This is Courtney Marie Andrews on Walking the Floor. Well, you can do that at the end. We usually do the song at the end.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, I like your Stones shirt.
Oh, thanks.
Good choice. Okay, give me a little check 1, 2.
Check 1, 2.
Yeah,
Check.
Looks like we're working good. What are you doing down in LA right now? Are
Well,
you in the middle of like I know you have a new-ish album that came out kind of recently, so
I do.
Are you doing like, you know, a promo run or something like that, doing shows?
I'm in the process of moving here and kind of trying to spend every break from tour here. to
Are
fall
you super
more in
excited
love.
that it's Seattle-like weather right now? Are you
I keep
I'm
getting
moving to
that.
sunny Southern California. Yippee!
I know. I keep getting that. People are like, "You brought it down." But
Yeah.
it seems like LA people are loving the rain.
Well, it hasn't rained here since like 1927, so yeah, we need it.
Exactly. Had
I
to
guess.
start asking for water in restaurants and stuff.
Yeah,
you know?
seriously, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy. I was just up in Santa Barbara. I mean, this doesn't have anything to do with anything, but I grew up in Santa Barbara, and like the big Lake Cachuma that we all, grew up fishing in and going to summer camp and all that kind of stuff is literally gone.
Is that
It's
the
gone.
one you pass on the 5?
You pass it on the 154. It's like kind of a little back
okay.
roads.
Yeah,
Right,
because there's this big lake on the 5 I've been passing for years, driving down from Seattle, and it was completely empty, or not completely, but it was so low you could see like the sides of the lake.
Well, somebody told me, and I don't know if this is absolutely true or not, that all the lakes south of the Sierras in California are man-made,
I would
like
believe
from
that.
damming rivers and stuff. So
I would believe that. I'm from Phoenix, where all lakes are man-made.
Well, yeah,
so.
there's even less water, I'm guessing.
Yeah,
Yeah, why don't we just start there? So you grew up in Phoenix?
I did.
Is that right?
Yeah.
What was your child? Tell me about your childhood. Family, like what got you into music, all that kind of stuff.
Well, I was raised by a single mom and who loved to sing in the car, and just always sang with her and all
Was
this.
she a musician, or did she just like to sing?
She just liked to sing in the car. She was not really a singer at all.
Yeah.
And she would always play musicals for me, and I fell in love with Annie and wanted to be an orphan. And then
Have you seen La La Land?
I just saw it, actually.
I loved it.
I did too. It was kind of reminiscent of the older musicals,
Totally.
which I really loved.
I went into it not knowing anything, and like to be honest, I'm not a big fan of like modern musicals at all. Although I love like the old,
classic
Gene Kelly and all that sort of
Yeah.
thing. And
kinda
I
the
was
same
so
way.
I hadn't even watched the trailer. I didn't know anything about it. I loved it. I was like, I am a fan of musicals now. This has turned me.
I know, and there was no auto tune or anything. It was just
Right.
all like natural singing, and
Yeah.
it's just really beautiful music and very old classic feeling, which I really admired. But
Okay, so you're singing along with musicals in the car with your mom.
yes, so I fell in love with music, started singing, and then I got a guitar.
Like how old?
I got a guitar when I was 8. My uncle lives in Mexico, and he bought me a guitar for like 30 pesos, nylon string.
Nice.
And I played that.
So you started learning your Willie Nelson songs.
Yeah. I started pretending like I could play. And then I got really into punk music in middle school. Started a feminist punk band was my first band, and nobody would write songs. I was the only one that would write.
See, this
the
is an
songs for
interesting
him.
thing here, and this was in part my journey to rootsy type music. But I ask people this question all the time, and I feel like and I keep getting it wrong over and over. But it seems to me that there's always been this real link between punk rock and either folk music or honky tonks, roots kind
yeah.
of music. I keep asking people that, and people go, "Nah, I wasn't really into punk rock when I was a kid." But I'm glad to hear that you were.
I was. Punk was like the reason I started writing songs. So these two girls I started a band with, they didn't write songs. And I was like, well, I'll give it a try. And I just kind of stumbled into songwriting and fell in love with it. And
And how old are you at that point?
I was probably 13, 14.
Okay.
Yeah.
So right about that's the time that you start putting your
Yeah.
first high school, junior high bands together.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I think there's a huge link. I mean, it's all kind of like rudimentary chords and that sort of thing. Like
Sure.
folk and punk are both,
Yeah.
I mean, in different ways, but
Songs about, being oppressed by the man, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
they're very emotive songs
Yeah.
in different ways. But yeah.
And like, what were you listening to?
Well, I really loved The Clash. I loved, I was kind of into a lot of like newer punk as well, like at the time, the Distillers.
Mm-hmm.
But, like a lot of classic punk, like the Ramones and,
Sure.
just that kind of stuff.
So you went back and studied,
And
studied the good old stuff.
Bikini Kill was what kind of really inspired the feminist punk.
Right.
So, yeah.
How did that lead you to sort of the sound that, like, I had read that you actually have like 6 albums or something, but maybe withdrew the first few of them.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm kind of jumping ahead here, but I'm wondering how you like
it
were the
transitioned.
ones that you withdrew more punky or something?
It was
like
even before then. Like,
okay.
Yeah, I mean, I had basically I got this really cheap recording program at like Best Buy or something,
Right.
and a mic for like $10, and I recorded on this like, you know, fat computer.
Yeah.
And just recorded some demos, and I put them online, and somebody commented. It was like this really weird recording like forum basically, and I put it online when I was 15. It was like, and somebody commented, it was like, you make kind of like folk music, great folk music. And I was like, honestly to God, I did not know what folk music was. I thought it was just like old person, you know, tale. Like I didn't make any connection to that. That sounds strange, but I just didn't know.
Like, were you still listening to like Bikini Kill and stuff like that?
Oh,
but
yeah.
the music you were making was sort of shifting to a more acoustic-y
Yeah, because it
thing?
was just me and acoustic guitar recording
Right.
it myself, so I didn't have
Like
an
accidental folk
ability.
music?
Yeah, like accidental folk music. And then I was like, huh, what's that? And the first person I found was, I started finding people like, you know, Lucinda Williams and Bob Dylan and Charles Van Zandt, and I was like, well, I've been missing out. Like, what is this? The lyrical content's amazing, and I love writing, and their ideas are so, I just connected with it, and on another level, like,
Right.
you know, just really became deep rooted in my soul, like in a different way. So
was that, and so did that become like your first record that you put out, those demos?
I never put those on a record. They were just like
Okay.
demos that I'd put on. I think the program, what was the program called? It was like Acid Planet. Have you
Okay.
heard of that?
No.
It's like a dance music. It's really
Okay.
not where I should have been putting music out, but they had a whole website that you could like post your Acid Planet recordings
Like,
on.
where's the grooves?
Yeah.
Where's the beats?
Yeah. Which I think it was just, so that's what I did. And then I put out a few records like on CDRs that I'd burned with like a CD burner and, you know, printed out some punk rock like
And I read
papers.
that you also have some sort of Jimmy Eat World connection.
I
We are managed by the same people.
Yeah,
Just
I
so you
know.
I've known
We
those guys forever.
actually opened for you guys.
Oh, really? With you in the band?
With me when I was in the
Oh.
band.
So we
At,
theoretically met years ago then, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I don't.
Or at least we're on the
we
same
met.
stage.
I think we met. Yeah, I think we met Dave. He came in and like Rick got him some
Whiskey? Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I remember that because we
Yeah.
had like a big case of Jimmy Eat World whiskey on tour with us for a really long time. It eventually got worked through.
Well, good. Yeah.
Yeah. So how did that come about? So, okay, because I'm just trying to follow the timeline here. First, you're in your punk rock band, then you start making your own sort of more folky recordings, but then you go on tour with Jimmy Eat World. What was your
So
role?
I released then. By the time I was 16, I had started releasing records and releasing them. So these kind of demos in the punk rock early stages are like 14, 15.
Right.
16, I released my first record. 17.
Which is very, very young to be putting out a record.
I know, which hence why they're erased.
Okay, right.
So yeah, 16, 17, releasing records. Jim came out to a few shows and he needed somebody to sing on their latest record when I was about 19 at this time.
Okay.
So I sang on the new record and then he liked it and so asked me to come on tour with them and started kind of my backup singing line of work, which I've done for several other artists since. So
And like you've done some session work. and
yeah,
stuff, right?
yeah. I've sang on a lot of records.
Now that seems like a tough world to break into. Did you just sort of fall into it, or how did that come about?
I definitely fell into that world. I never imagined that I would become kind of a backup singer for so many artists. But I just, you know, since we're in Jimmy Eat World, I had that kind of on the resume. And
Right.
was
And were you
recommended.
still living in Phoenix at that point, or
By
were you
the
at?
end of Jimmy Eat World, I was still in Phoenix. About a month after that year cycle, I had moved to Seattle.
Okay.
It's when I was 21. So it was like 5 or 6 years ago.
Now I also had read that you went on your first, basically like a busking tour when you were about 16 years old, and that you were traveling around by Greyhound bus on the East Coast and the West Coast, all over the place. Do tell. that sounds like a crazy adventure.
Yeah.
Like, first off, how did you talk your mom into letting you go, and or did you just run away? What's the story? That sounds like a wild adventure for a 16-year-old.
So I had made some great friends, and we were all into like the same songs and that sort of thing. And we my friend Thomas, he had a Suburban, and he had a battery operated PA, and we had made this plan to just one summer drive up the coast. I was probably 16 or 17 at this time. We drove up the coast, and Thomas was much older than me, probably like 8 years and stuff. So maybe my mom just felt safe about that, but I don't know.
Yeah, maybe your mom didn't feel safe about that.
Yeah, or she didn't at all. I don't know. I mean, it was like a big group.
There's this older dude with a car, and he's going to take me on this tour.
He's a charmer.
Right.
But he's one of my best friends. And we all we all went. So
it's one of these things that probably sounds crazier on paper than in reality, I'm guessing.
I mean, I have amazing, crazy stories from that time. I mean, we like slept under bridges. We were living a very vagabond like lifestyle. I mean, we basically just made our money by setting up the battery operated PA system, and like we did it in Huntington Beach, Cannon Beach, Oregon, like all these little tourist towns in the summertime where all these people are walking around in the heat and stuff. And we sold CDRs out of the, burned CDR discs out of the guitar cases for.
So you didn't have like a record deal or anything like that?
Oh, no. Right. No. I mean, this is pre Jimmy Eat World, pre Damien Dorado, pre everything.
Right.
Like all these records. Like I'd released maybe 2 records at that time.
I'm curious now that you're more established and, a professional or whatever you want to call it. Like, do you ever see anybody from those days at your shows? Like, yes. Are there like people that saw you busking in Huntington Beach that are turning up at your gigs now?
There are, which is so funny. I actually had somebody at a show in Portland say, "You busked at my university in Olympia," because we went to the Evergreen University and just busked on the campus during like the lunch hour.
Yeah.
And he fell in love with my music at that time. That was probably like 9 years ago, and he's followed every record since. So we have a few that kind of surface, and it's always like, wow, you still remember.
Yeah, I mean, how and I always ask, I mean, you've been making records for a long time, but you're still what I would think of as a young artist.
Yeah,
I mean, you just started really young.
Yeah,
but like, how have you gone about building your fan base? I mean, you talked about right there, you started out busking, but as the years have gone by, how has that progressed?
I think I was still kind of figuring it out, and for all those years, I always kind of call that like, those are my college years. Right. I was just kind of bumping around, just trying to see what works for me. And for a long time, I never wanted to be like that type of artist that just like, I mean, you never know what happens, but I kind of always liked the more gradual roots type following, homegrown type following, I guess you could say. And so I've kind of just gone about it in my own little way, like up and down. There's no like, straight shoot up to the top kind of
10-point plan.
Yeah.
Right.
There's no 10-point plan. But
I'm assuming at some point you went from busking to actually playing in venues and then maybe getting a booking agent. And,
exactly. Well, once I had been on tour with these bigger artists as a backup singer, I kind of was like, oh, this is not. I had a very different idea of how the music industry was. I was like, when I was busking and doing all that sort of thing, this was just like a free living, just like whatever, like life's groovy. It's just cool to go with the flow. And then you kind of realize, oh, music's, has a business side that is hard to grasp when you're starting out.
Yeah, sure.
Because you're an artist, you're creative. You don't want to think about that stuff,
yeah.
And so after touring with those artists, that's when I kind of realized that, you need these sort of things in place to make this happen.
Right. Yeah, it really isn't like a meritocracy. It's about all these other things. There's so many people between you making the song and anybody ever discovering it.
Exactly.
Obviously not when you're busking. That's like you're just taking it to the people. But in the professional realm, sure, it's a very different animal.
It for sure is. So,
what was your biggest takeaway from those years of working with other people and seeing sort of how they ran their organizations, like the pros and cons of whatever it is they did to get there?
I'm lucky to say that every artist I've ever been a session singer for or player for has just been so professional and sweet and wonderful and just easygoing. And I think that's kind of what I've always modeled, like at least my own kind of band and stuff after, is just go with the flow, be chill, and everything will be awesome, you know?
Right.
But also work hard and constantly be like setting yourself new goals and that sort of thing, and writing and being creative. You can't just stop that process ever.
Right.
So
Let's talk about that a little bit, because
Yeah.
you are referred to as a songwriter's songwriter, which for a very young person, I mean, that's like a huge compliment to whoever wrote that about you. Like that's, that's
Yeah.
usually that's like it's a crusty old dude, much further down the road in their career that gets referred to that way. So let's talk about your actual songwriting process. I mean, what type of songwriter are you? Are you somebody that's always writing, or are you somebody that sort of picks it up here and there when you feel inspired? Like what's your approach to it?
I'd say I'm somebody that's always writing.
Okay.
Yeah. Because, you're going fishing and you don't know what fish you're going to get unless you're always fishing.
Right.
And you could go one day and it could be the season for a certain type, And it's just like, that's kind of how I've always dealt with it. If I'm always casting my line, then I'll pick up a bunch of different types of songs, So I'm definitely always trying to stay creative and that sort of thing.
I mean, it sounds, I listened to your latest record, and it sounds, I mean, this is like so cliche to say this, but it sounds wise beyond your years,
Thank you.
So as far as lyrical content, I was just wondering how much of that is sort of storytelling, drawing from maybe some of your own experiences, or how much of that is just, sort of fictional, I don't know, there's different approaches to it. I'm just wondering how much of that. And to be honest, I hate when people ask me those kind of questions. So you can tell me to go fuck myself too,
No.
like, if you don't want to talk about it. But I was just curious.
It's definitely a blend, because I admire a lot of songwriters who do very different things. Randy Newman's very much a storyteller,
Right.
But Townes, I feel like, writes definitely more from his heart, and I've kind of grabbed from both those, and I like to use a blend of personal stories mixed with those that I've met and stories that I've heard or read in a book or a newspaper. So
I mean, if you're writing sort of somebody else's story,
yeah,
how do you approach that? Like, is it almost like method acting? Like, do you try to sort of get into their frame of mind and think from where they would be thinking?
I think it starts with empathy. It's knowing that person and understanding them. You can't write about somebody you don't know or understand, And I think it all comes down to empathy and understanding them. So, yeah, I think that's
a really good way of putting it.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about your new album.
Okay.
How did this one come about?
Well,
tell me, like, who produced it, who's putting it out, where'd you record it, all that. Give me all the details.
So I started writing the album when I was in Belgium as a backup singer for a Belgian pop star. His name's Milo. And
so is that something you still do that from time to time, like go out with other people?
I haven't done it since this record.
Okay.
That was I did it this year. I was a lead guitar player for Damian Dorado.
Okay.
So that was the last one I did.
So you have some lead guitar skills.
Yeah, I played psychedelic lead guitar for him, and it was a blast.
Nice.
It was, totally expanded my skill set, and it was amazing. But yeah, so I was in Belgium, they like rented me an apartment, had a lot of like time. I was also going through like a breakup, and wrote just really self-reflective, away from any friends or family, like in a foreign country going through this. So I wrote all the songs there, and then I came back, started bartending for a little bit, and wrote a lot of the songs at a bar in small town Washington.
So this is outside of Seattle somewhere?
Yeah, it's in a town called Duval, and I worked at a little tavern, the oldest tavern in the valley of that area. And I just needed to not be on tour for a little bit, and so I kind of just, worked at a bar for a little bit and really loved hearing the stories of patrons and that sort of thing. So their stories definitely like play a little bit into this personal record. And
has anybody called you on that?
What?
Like any of the patrons that you wrote about? Are they like, hey, that's that story I told you about my aunt?
What's really funny is one of the patrons is actually in my music video.
Oh, really?
Yeah, her name is Dancin' Deborah, and she's I haven't. There's names for them all, but
Right.
she was like the dancer in my video. She's just
Great.
old woman who, she's just like one of the sweetest people you'll ever meet. Just the main star. She's just dancing and
Nice.
Yeah. And,
Did you tell her that?
well, the song wasn't about her, but she knows, like, it's all like centralized around a bar and stuff.
Yeah, sure.
But you know, it's cool. I'm not afraid to like be open about that kind of stuff.
Right. Yeah. Sure.
You know, I'm never gonna like rub it in somebody's face, like, this song was influenced by you, you
Right,
know. But
right.
it's there, it's on the table, it's open.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, I tried to find a producer. It didn't feel right. Everybody's ideas that I talked to just didn't really melt with mine. Like we just didn't fit together. And so got my band together. My guys I've been with for a few years now, and we just recorded it, or rehearsed in a basement, and then recorded the record in like 5 days.
Oh, okay.
In Seattle.
So did you produce it yourself?
Yeah, and I
Oh,
produced
cool.
it. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. It was just it was right for this batch of songs. You know?
Right. And then how do you put it out?
Well, I shopped it for like a year, and
God, isn't that the most frustrating thing?
it's so frustrating.
To sit on a record. I made a record over the summer.
Yeah.
And I'm not shopping it. I already had it's the same label that put out my last record, and I already knew that going into it. But just because of schedule and whatnot, it's not coming out till April, and it's very strange. I've never sat on a record that long in my life, which really isn't that long.
It's not, but it is for your
It
creative
feels like
soul.
a long time. Yeah, and I think the hardest part is, every time I listen to it, I just endlessly find things that I would do slightly different.
Yeah.
You know, it's
and the
like-
more you listen to that,
Yeah.
like the more you play the songs, you're like, I don't feel like this anymore.
Right,
you
yeah,
know?
it's funny.
Constantly. It's hard to sit on a record that
It
long.
is.
It really is.
So you shopped it for a year.
I did. And there was always this label in Portland. They're a small indie label called Mama Bird Recording Co. They, constantly sent me a message like once a month, maybe, hey, just checking in. Like, this record means a lot to me. Really would love to work with you. Let's put it out. And I was kind of like waiting for, a bigger bite, more funding, that kind of
Right.
boring business crap. And it just didn't happen. So towards the end of the year, I was like, you know what? I'm putting this record out. Feels right. I'm going to put it out. And they did a great, wonderful job. And it was kind of like then that I'm like, I want to go with the people that believe in what I do. And I don't want to try and force anybody to get into a relationship. If anytime something is forced, it just feels so wrong, and like it's just not going to work. And so I went with the people that like really believed in it, and
Right.
they did a great job.
It's a funny feeling when, there's like, just in the music industry, you sort of have to wear different hats. And there are times when you have to go out and sell yourself to people and like shopping a record around. And just for me personally, it sounds like maybe you feel the same way. Like, that's not my strong suit.
No, I don't think it's.
I know that about me. Like, I am not good at that.
No.
And I don't like the process of it.
Selling yourself is not. It never works.
Right.
And I'm not. I'm the same exact way. I always feel kind of gross.
Yeah.
Like, ugh. I just told that person that my own self was good.
Right.
Like, it's like
totally.
weird.
Yeah,
like,
I
ugh.
know. It's such a weird feeling.
It's just. Yeah, it doesn't feel good. So it's always good to have people that can sell you for you. 'Cause
Right.
It's just, artists aren't, I don't think, usually very good at that.
Yeah, it's not. It's just uncomfortable.
It's just awkward.
It sucks.
Yeah.
There's no other way
Yeah,
to put it. It's terrible.
I know. I completely agree.
As the years have gone on and you've, made a bunch of records and toured a bunch and toured with other artists and all that sort of thing, like, do you feel like you're part of a scene? Is there like a scene that you feel like sort of connected to? And if so, who would your peers be?
Oh, man. I honestly,
Are you just lone wolfing it out there on the road?
I have made so many great friends and songwriters, like met so many great songwriters and they become my friends and over the years. And I feel like I've kind of created just because of my backup singing work, I have a very eclectic groups that I know, you know, like I've sang in the pop rock world, and I've sang in the pop world, and I sang in the indie world. And, so I just have like a very eclectic group of comrades that I've met. So no, I wouldn't say I'm part of
Comrades. Does that make you a socialist or some sort of communist? That's not going to be tolerated in Donald Trump's America, ma'am.
Crap. Yeah, I know. It's just, it is what it is. But
Right.
sue me. Just kidding. But yeah, I'd say that there's definitely a up and coming Americana scene that's really great right now. You know, I don't know if I'm directly in the scene and, you know, powwow around with a bunch of the artists, but I can say that from a close distance that I've met several of them, and they're all extremely inspiring in the Americana scene.
Right. When you go out on the road now, who do you go out on the road with? Or are you since you have a pretty new album, are you in the middle of
I'm
doing
kind
a bunch
of
touring?
Yeah, so I just got a new booking agent, so
Nice.
I'm in like
That's
the
why you're
process
moving to LA and going to Hollywood. I get it. I'm with you.
Yeah, just baby steps. But let's see. I'm about to do some dates with Joe Pug in a couple days.
Oh, cool.
I think the touring's like just about to like really rev up for this record. So
Am I right in thinking, does Joe Pug also have a podcast?
I don't know.
I might be
He might.
making that up in my head right now.
He's a great songwriter, though. He's a great songwriter. I think there's so many kind of, smaller, under the radar artists that are just incredible writers.
Sure.
And I've been lucky enough to meet a lot of them. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing, it's I don't know if it's a genre thing or what, but I feel like when I talk to younger artists now, there's such a greater awareness of songwriting and sort of the craft of songwriting, and the people that, you touched on, like Dylan and Lucinda Williams and some of these great, Townes Van Zandt, some of these highly regarded songwriters. Like when I was a kid coming up, I don't remember any of us ever talking about that
About
type of stuff ever, Yeah.
I think it's like
Dude, I came up with this killer riff. Yeah, I don't know.
I think it's a generation thing.
Yeah,
like,
maybe so.
Like songwriting kind of fell off it kind of got like disregarded for a little bit, and then you started hearing like pop songs and top 40 songs, and you're like, what was that lyric? Like, I think it was like a big consciousness of the world and our generation going up that's like, that lyric was terrible. What?
We can do better than that.
Yeah.
Let's show these old fogies.
Yeah, exactly.
That's funny.
Yeah, and then, the next generation will just be, look at this riff.
Right, yeah. I guess it just kind of swings back and forth.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Do you want to play a song?
Yeah, I'd love
that.
That'd
be great.
I'd love that.
Let me make sure here. Let me check my list of questions to make sure that I didn't miss anything. You didn't really get too deep into your travels on the Greyhound bus, but I'll let that slide.
Oh yeah, the Greyhound bus.
I have an affinity for anybody that ever has ridden a Greyhound bus, because I used to take the Greyhound bus from time to time from Santa Barbara down to LA to go to gigs.
Oh, did you?
Which is not a long travel. It's by car, it's like an hour and a half, but on the Greyhound it would be much longer because you stopped everywhere. But just there's something about like the smell of a Greyhound bus that like gets in your nose and never leaves.
They're so intense.
Yeah.
I took it from Phoenix to New York, which was a 4-night trip.
Wow.
And then I took it all around the East Coast, and I've never met the like level of characters that I've met on a Greyhound bus. Yeah. Just absolute insanity.
Yes.
I just met these like hookers who were like abducted by a pimp, and they wanted to like sing harmonies with me because they saw I had a guitar. And so I was like in the back of the bus with these like hookers like singing a whatever song that they wanted to sing. It was some R&B song, I can't even remember, but like it was just those kind of stories happen on the Greyhound bus. And like, oh, RAC doesn't work in Alabama, it's August.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
Oh, yeah. Great.
We're just gonna tough it out.
Yeah.
I hope that some of that stuff, and I'm sure it has, but I hope that's wound up in some of your tunes.
Yeah, I think it's like it'll continue to wind up.
I want to hear the hooker song. But play whatever you want. Here, actually, let me set this up real quick.
This is a song called Table for One. Table for one, I've got no one I'm waiting on. I just pulled into town an hour ago from the streets of Houston to this diner in Ohio. I'm just waiting for the bar to open, 'cause I'm a little bit lonely, a little bit stoned, and I'm ready to go home. You don't wanna be like me. This life, it ain't free. Always chained when I leave. Been dancing with strangers, sleep in the van when the show's over. I've been driving until I get tired. Found peace in the redwoods, lost it 20 miles later. There is no telling which way this road bends. Been wondering how you've been, hoping things have gotten better. Hope you finally settled down in Washington, 'cause I'm a little bit lonely, a little bit stoned, and I'm ready to go home. You don't wanna be like me. This life, it ain't free. Always chained when I leave.
That was wonderful. Now go enjoy the rain. Thank you for coming. Seriously, that was amazing.
Thanks for having me. The heart is funny.
Yeah, that was Courtney Marie Andrews playing Table for One off her latest record, Honest Life, right here on Walking the Floor. Make sure you go to CourtneyMarieAndrews.com. Check out her tour dates. I know she's heading to the UK soon. You can find her on Twitter at Courtney Ma Music, so you can keep up on all the latest goings on with Miss Courtney Marie Andrews. She's fantastic. And, don't forget, lots of old episodes of Walking the Floor just sitting there in the iTunes store. So get over there. There's 70 of them, man. 70. It's a lot of episodes. That's a lot of catching up for you newbies to get to. Get on there, go to the iTunes store, subscribe. And if you're feeling frisky, leave us a review, leave us a rating, make us feel good. It all helps. We'll see you soon. We'll see you next week, in fact. I think I'm going to post my Aaron Lee Tajan interview next Monday. We'll see you then. Adios, amigos.
Sometimes good people draw troublesome things.